cases specifically will reach the Supreme Court and when?
Well, the problem is it's hard to get into the Supreme Court. I've got the best Supreme Court advocates, lawyers, that want to argue the case if it gets there. But they said it's very hard to get a case up there. Can you imagine? Donald Trump, President of the United States, files a case, and I probably can't get a case, even with, and we have tremendous proof. We have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits, sworn affidavits, and it's very hard to get a case to the Supreme Court. That's what everybody's fighting for. I thought that Mike Kelly, Congressman, I thought they had a great case, and it got thrown out the other day. Now they'll appeal it, I hope, to the Supreme Court. They have a great case because the legislature didn't make the decision on this stuff, and they have a great case, but you have to appeal it. The big thing is, can you get it?
That's a big part of it. The president's right insofar as it's not a sure thing the Supreme Court will take up any individual, any specific challenge, right? But the president is also right that, you know, this needs to be figured out, that we have to find a way forward here where we can get answers about this, and it's going to require taking it to the Supreme Court. But there are no guarantees. Right now in Pennsylvania, the appeals court judge there has already ruled against the Trump team, the Trump legal team, in saying that they're not going to throw out all these ballots because there were rule changes made to the election before the election. That's a very short version of a much more complicated legal argument. And so now they're trying to appeal it to the Supreme Court. That's where it is. Now, for this, we should all understand, well, hold on a minute. Can we even trust? Look at what just happened as I've been talking to you. Look at what happened with the lockdown issue and religious freedom. You can't trust John Robert, okay? Can't trust him. Guy will always find a way. Somehow, whatever the legal and media establishment thinks is the moderate path, which is not the same thing as actually being a moderate, that's what he will do. So you can't trust him, all right? That's 4. Where does that 5th vote come in? Could be Kavanaugh. Could be Gorsuch. Who knows? Gorsuch on the case about religious freedom was pretty good. He actually said, it's past time to make plain that while the pandemic poses many grave challenges, there is no world in which the Constitution tolerates color-coded executive edicts that reopen liquor stores and bike shops, but shutter churches, synagogues, and mosques. Yeah. That even had to go to the Supreme Court, that we needed the Supreme Court to weigh in on that, tells you just how much jeopardy religious freedom is really in this country and how many violations of religious freedom have been ongoing now, right? But I'll take a win. I wish it wasn't a win that we needed, but I'll take it. But even if we get to the Supreme Court, understand, my friends, there are no guarantees. What do you think the mentality will be of the Supreme Court about possibly changing the results of one of these swing states? Remember, even if they just get Biden below 270, then it switches into the House of Representatives. There's this constitutional process, and all of a sudden we have a very different election that Trump could, in fact, win. We have 26 of the states would be Republican based on their congressional delegation. So, yeah. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to be willing to do that? You think the Supreme Court will have the backbone to say, yeah, we're going to throw out 600,000 votes in Pennsylvania. They were illegally cast. You weren't allowed to do this the way they did it. They weren't allowed to change the election so that they could count them afterwards, or whatever the specifics of it may be. What do you think the streets would be like in this country then? I'm not advocating against the Supreme Court making that call. I hope they do. I'm just trying to take you into the mindset of the different judges here and why the Democrats still remain very confident that really no matter what, they'll end up getting their way. The mayhem on the streets would be like nothing we've ever seen if in their minds the Supreme Court took another election. They think that they stole the 2000 election for Bush, even though no, Bush won that election. Every analysis of it, every vote count, Bush won Florida. That was reality. Okay. But they still have a narrative. And as you know, that's what really matters among the libs, among the Democrats. They have a narrative that the only reason that Bush won in 2000 was because of the Supreme Court. What do you think they would do now when they're going around saying that Trump is a fascist if the Supreme Court allowed him to get 4 more years? Just let's all be very clear about what the ramifications for the country would be. I still think that what matters is who won, and that you can't allow cheating, and that this is the center of our whole system, right? I believe that, but I'm just saying these are pressures that are put on the system that may prevent an honest and fair response, even from the Supreme Court, on exactly what happened here. Here's, there's plenty of examples of this. Here's a guy on MSNBC. This is what they're still saying about the president for bringing legal challenges. They compare him to, and his base, they compare Trump supporters to Nazis. They really say this. Play 2.
And I think because we've seen how close we came this time, that if there is this drive among what is now the Republican Party, I guess the Trump Party, to make sure this can't happen again, to make sure that our people are in position to do what wasn't done this time, we've got a problem. Because I can see in 2022 a number of these Republicans being removed from their jobs and replaced by people who are willing to do whatever it takes to keep their candidate in power or to put him in power. And once you have the state legislators asserting that power, I then worry about the courts, because there are people, even on the Supreme Court, who believe the state legislature's power is almost total. And so I think, I'm using a very blunt metaphor here, Joe. If you remember, or if you know how the German Luftwaffe used the Spanish Civil War as a testing ground for their theories, I think we may be seeing some of the more extreme supporters of someone like Donald Trump saying, we've learned from 2020, we know what to do next time.
Yeah, the Nazi Air Force. That's right. We got to bring Nazis in. You can't talk about Trump and his supporters without finding a way to make your World War II analogy. And, of course, Trump is the Third Reich. People are insane. They really are, but they don't stop. No, we're trying to use the legal process. We are trying to use the avenues open to us to find out what really happened here, because we've already established it's a heck of a thing that Joe Biden won this election. It's, for anybody who understands how these elections tend to work and how it all plays out, it's a pretty big shock. A pretty big shock. But here we are. Here we are. Being told that, oh no, nothing to see here. It's fine. Joe Biden was just so inspiring. You know, this doddering old fool. Oh, I gotta wear a mask and I'm sitting here and, just sort of saying things I've been saying for a long time. And here I am, no joke. No joke. That guy got over 80 million votes and blew away all of these different expectations, all of these different metrics that have been used to correctly, after the fact, predict who the president would be, right? So once you see these numbers, whoever won the election. Didn't count anymore. There's something going on here, friends. We all know it. And there are enormously powerful and influential forces doing everything that they can to make sure that we don't get the answers to all of this. Think about what it would mean. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. If we can prove, and I mean really prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there was a Democrat plot to steal this election from Donald Trump, which, given the rhetoric they used and their belief that he stole the 2016 election with Russian help and Russia collusion, that he's a fascist, that he's a threat to our democracy, they say that all the time. I mean, that's common. That's the standard way Democrats describe this president. Given that that's their view of him, why would it be so unbelievable that they would take extreme, even illegal actions that go to the very core of our republic that kick right at the load-bearing walls of our system. Why would it be unbelievable they would do that? No, I would say if I believed that a sitting president was really a fascist who was trying to destroy the whole system and was going to purge his enemies and, real fascism stuff. Yeah, I think a little vote cheating would probably be the necessary remedy, if not a lot more. But Democrats assure you that would never happen. That would never happen. Be quiet, peasant. Do as you're told. Wear your mask. Don't ask questions about this election. That's what they tell us, and I say no. With travel being what it is, all these restrictions, all this uncertainty, it's really hit me hard that I can't see a lot of loved ones over the holidays. It's also affected my girlfriend's family, my siblings, their girlfriends, their families. So I got with my flower friends at Bloomsy Box to announce their Bloomin' Cyber Monday sale. Right now, save 25% on spectacular Bloomsy Box flowers. They're amazing. I have some in my apartment right now. They're just like the ones I'm going to be sending my family over this holiday season. 25% off. Bloomsy Box are simply better blooms. And picture the smile on that special someone's face when your holiday flowers arrive. It's going to be magical. Bloomsy Box are spectacular flowers sustainably grown on family farms around the world. Your flower gift is handpicked, arranged at the farm, and delivered straight to your door so they stay fresh way longer. Their prices are already incredible, but with their Bloomin' Cyber Monday sale, you'll save an extra 25%. No hidden fees, no endless upsells. The sale ends soon, but you can get 25% now if you hurry over to bloomsybox.com and enter BUCK. That's promo code BUCK for 25% off at BLOOMSY box.com, bloomsybox.com.
The election, I was called by the biggest people saying, congratulations, political people. Congratulations, sir, you just won the election. It was 10 o'clock, and you looked at the numbers, and I'm sure you felt that way. This election was over, and then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over. If you take a look at you just take a look at just about every state that we're talking about, every swing state that we're talking about. And they did these massive dumps of votes. And all of a sudden, I went from winning by a lot to losing by a little. And in some cases, it took a period of time to do it.
That is what happened. He is giving an accurate recitation of what it was like on election night. I remember, and some of you who are watching our live coverage at the first will know what I'm talking about here. It looked like once Trump had won Ohio and Florida, it felt like how could he lose at that point? But sure enough, we woke up the next morning and it's Biden's ahead. What? And this was always a risk that we ran with these mail-in ballots. But as we know, it might have been even more than just the delay in arrival of ballots. It could be the fraud in the creation of and illicit counting of ballots that are illegal. But this is another problem we've got, and something that I want us all to be very clear on. If they can do mail-in balloting going forward, and we don't make sure that this is, very, very thoroughly investigated, we're going to have a problem winning national level elections. We're going to have a big problem because this is something that Democrats have wanted for a long time. Notice they never accuse our side of fraud. They know that that's just not something. The Republicans don't commit fraud. We collude with Russia, right? Whatever lunacy that they come up with. We have the Supreme Court in our pocket, but we don't manufacture votes. That's a Democrat pastime. That's something the Democrats do. And they particularly do it in large urban centers, right? I mean, if you control some rural county with 50,000 residents, that doesn't give you the same kind of ability to mess with the numbers, to turn an election, than if you run the political machine in a place like Philadelphia, in a place like Milwaukee, in a real dense population center where you're talking about a few million votes that will be counted, a few million votes that you can work with. You can change the numbers as you need to. So it's absolutely essential. I mean, why would we not want to look into this more? Put aside for a second Trump and the fight here and everything else that he's pushing for. Why wouldn't we want to make sure that we get as thorough an investigation of this as we possibly can? Because this is going to happen again. They like this. You think Democrats are going to ever want to go back from mail-in ballot? You think it's over after COVID-19? No. This is one of the many things that will now be changed going forward about our lives, about elections in this case, because of COVID. Things will be different now as a result of this, and they do not plan on letting this go in any other direction other than the one that they want it to. And you have Trump who's saying stuff here, and we need hard facts on this, and we need conclusive evidence presented about things like dead people voted. All right, we know that some dead people voted. How many? And how did they vote? Meaning, not that they were resurrected or there are zombie voters out there, but what was the process that people used to cheat? It's one thing to say there was cheating and to look at the numbers and understand it, but we need to be able to, in a court, but also in the court of public opinion, have people understand what the mechanisms were for that cheating. Here's an example of it. You have the president talking about dead people voting. Play 5.
This is a terrible thing that's happened. The mail-in ballots are a disaster. They sent millions and millions and millions of mail-in ballots. I'm sure you know people that got 2, 3, or 4, because I do, where they said, we got 4 ballots. They got one at a country home. Dead people were seeing ballots. But even worse, dead people were applying to get a ballot. They were making application to get ballots. Many. And, we're not talking about 10 people. We're talking, there are a lot of dead people that so-called voted in this election. But dead people were, in some cases, in many, many cases, thousands of cases, voted. But also, dead people made application to vote. They were dead 10 years, 15 years, and they actually made application. This is total fraud, and how the FBI and Department of Justice, I don't know, maybe they're involved, but how people are allowed to get away from this stuff with this stuff is unbelievable. This election was rigged. This election was a total fraud.
Where is the FBI and the DOJ in all of this? Why aren't we hearing from any members of the Department of Justice about their early indicators here? Are they looking into this? We don't get to hear much about it. No, instead that we just sit back and we assume that they're to be trusted? You think that there aren't a lot of so-called career employees at the Department of Justice who would not love to see the establishment return, the swamp fill up again all across D.C., with really what's just going to be a retread, a return of Obama administration officials as part of a Biden administration. And that's where this is going to be. You don't think that there are still individuals who would at least drag their feet? There aren't careerists? Yeah, I know you could say, what about Attorney General Barr? He's not going to be Attorney General Barr much longer, right? We all understand that. So there are limitations. Even if he decided that he was doing everything that he could, you need more than that. You need people within the bureaucracy who are going to do good investigative work and find out what's going on here. And it's just Trump and his legal team and a handful of people in the media who are pushing for this. Other than that, we're just on our own here. They're creating this reality the same way they created this distorted nightmare that didn't really exist, as we know, of Russia collusion. The same way that they put the country through that for 4 years. They're pretending that everything here is entirely normal. They're pretending there's no reason for concern over what we've seen with these votes. And I just don't buy it. I'm not going to buy it. I've got questions that need answers, and we need to keep pushing, because a lot of people, including perhaps in the federal bureaucracy, yes, even under the Trump executive branch, don't want to do what's necessary at this point to find out what really happened here. I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and you better pray this crime never happens to you, because it goes after your most valuable asset, your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys, cyber thieves, they find your home's title online because it's stored in the cloud and it's on servers. Then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and start taking out loans against the equity in your home. You often won't find out about this until you receive a payment notice in the mail, perhaps even a foreclosure notice. You have to take action with the people I trust to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO. That'll get you 30 free days of protection. It will also allow you to check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. Go to HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection and to check at that site to see if your home's title has already been breached. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO.
Allison, we had to reset the equation to create something that would be sustainable for the long haul. We had said back in September we would open our schools, biggest school system in the country. Most cities weren't opening schools at all. We did. But we also said we'd have really strict standards. And I said if we hit to 3% positivity, that would be the point where we'd have to do something different. Now we have a different approach. We're adding a lot more testing, weekly testing in every school. Kids will have to have a testing consent form to come to school. This is going to allow us to get back up with our school system next Monday.
So they're opening up schools in NYC, at least at the lower school level, at the, I think, going up to 8th grade or so. But let's bring in somebody who really knows exactly what's happening. We could talk about the fight to get our schools reopened, not just in NYC, but it's also a nationwide problem. Joe Borelli is with us now. He is a member of the New York City Council. He's also just a conservative man about town you'll see on various channels and radio shows giving his commentary. Joe, great to have you back.
Thank you for having me, as always. Appreciate it.
Tell us what's going on here with schools. Let's just start with the de Blasio announcement. So they're kind of opening schools finally. I guess, did they realize that the evidence showed that young children in particular were at no risk, and so this was crazy? What's going on?
It's funny to think, de Blasio and Fauci have now come around to the Borelli position, which is the consensus within the science community, the medical community, and in journals and other studies, that schools are relatively safe. They're no more dangerous than the communities which they're housed in. So if there's a spike in the community, there might be a spike in schools. But I am glad to hear the mayor has decided to reopen schools. It is a good thing. It's the right direction. There's no doubt about that. I think our lawsuit and our impending hearing on December 3rd probably played a role. When the science is on our side and the law is on our side, it would have been tough for them to defend their policy. But it's good. It's going to be K through 5 and then K through 8, and then hopefully the high school kids will get back in, which is a reasonable thing to do. It's what actually a lot of other school districts with more aggressive, superintendents have done. So I'm not opposed to the method in which they're doing it. And they're going to get the special needs kids back in 5 days a week as soon as possible, which is also really a good step. So, this is one of the days that maybe I won't dunk on Mayor de Blasio and just be thankful that he's finally come around to this position.
There never should have been this school shutdown, though. And I think you noted that Dr. Fauci, for example, was unwilling to look at the obvious data as that was clear even in the summertime, and say there's no reason for these schools to be shut down. And, this is playing out in other places across the country as well. And I just want to ask, where are the teachers' unions on all of this? How has de Blasio been able to maneuver with them so that they're not all threatening to strike or anything else?
I think the rubber just met the road, and they were all exposed for sort of just this unscientific approach. I mean, the carpet was swept away from under them. The thing is, we can blame teachers' unions, and that's fine. But almost every teachers' union in the country, almost every municipal union in the country was sort of fighting for, their members to get the least amount of exposure. It really was, though, only Bill de Blasio who just completely caved and collapsed into their every demand and said, you know what, you're right, we don't really have to go back to school. So it's beyond just the teachers union, although they are certainly to blame. We oftentimes expect that our leaders will have a little bit of a backbone, and finally, de Blasio found his, and he, from what I'm hearing, he just sort of put his foot down and said, "We're actually going to open up on this day."
Speaking of Joe Borelli, he is a city councilman here in New York. Joe, some very troubling statistics coming out over the Thanksgiving weekend. We had Black Friday happening, and while we do have this whole family and holiday component, there's the commercial aspect, right? There's how our businesses that many cases rely on a huge chunk of their sales coming from this period till the end of the year. The statistics that I saw said that in New York and New Jersey, as many or as high as a third of small businesses have closed.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of the statistic that seems to be matching what you could kind of see on the street. When we came out of our initial lockdown, I mean, a lot of people, you could tell, very easily that some businesses didn't pull up the iron gates. And the statistic, I think, proves that. Whether you're in New York State, whether you're in New Jersey, and any other state that faced a significantly long lockdown, I think that's probably the accurate number. And juxtapose that to states. I mean, every state had some form of restriction, some form of lockdown, some form of regulation. But juxtapose what New York and New Jersey and Michigan and California did as compared to what other states did, I mean, namely Florida, where they delayed shutting down until it was necessary and then acted with urgency and deliberate purpose in reopening, right? Almost as though the same purpose they found in locking down was what they put into reopening. Those states are not seeing the same type of business shutdowns as us. And when you play this out in the long term, it doesn't bode well for New York. We have an extremely expensive government. We have extremely expensive state government and city government. And that relies on small businesses and large business to be rocking and rolling. Bill de Blasio actually didn't raise taxes, in any significant amount in New York City. The budget expansion that happened under him was allowed to happen because of the commercial boom that New York City was facing in terms of businesses wanting to come here, tourists wanting to come here, and mom and pops thriving all over New York City. So, I mean, that's just the reality. Now that has been taken away, we're going to see a lot of financial problems for the city and state. Although Biden may bail us out, right? I mean, I suppose that's an option.
Well, yeah. We're speaking of Joe Borelli, New York City Councilman. Joe, what do you think should happen here going forward? I mean, I know there's at some level there's the vaccine and the timeline for that is going to affect one way or the other how rapidly we reopen and the extent of it. But do you think that New York City, I mean, given Cuomo and de Blasio's mindset, is still likely to go into a kind of COVID hibernation mode or over the wintertime? Or do you think that once this vaccine, which is supposed to be distributed in a matter of weeks, starts getting distributed, they may be a little bit less draconian?
Yeah, I would hope so. But the governor has begun to act more erratically as the weeks gone by, and he's someone that even threw shade on the idea of people getting the vaccine as long as Trump was the president. That's insane. That's actually really, really troubling. And there is a role for government here. I mean, the hospital beds are approaching capacity. I mean, that's not a rumor. That's happening where I am on Staten Island. And there is a role for government in opening up some new facilities and making sure beds are available for people at the hospitals that aren't going for COVID and doing their regular type of procedures. That's where government should be. Throwing shade on a vaccine and acting erratically, banning people from gathering on Thanksgiving, it just really undermines this weird idea that Americans have that Governor Cuomo is this competent hero in the new COVID world.
And it's amazing that here we are seeing that schools never should have been closed. Maybe that's an indicator. The people that were saying they were following the science, let's close the schools in the fall. They were wrong to do that. Maybe they're wrong about other things, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the science, right? If a school has a whole bunch of positive cases from kids, close that particular school or that particular classroom briefly, but don't do a system-wide shutdown. That's kind of the consensus everywhere you look. We also have a contact tracing core in New York City. We were told that we needed this tracing core. Once we had it, we'd be able to open and track all our cases and solve the mystery of where COVID comes from. Not only did the contact tracing people say that schools weren't the problem, but they also couldn't provide evidence that there was links to restaurants or bars or nightclubs or salon. By the way, I mean, I'm not an irrational person. If the contact tracing core said, hey, we linked a dozen cases to a restaurant and the restaurant wasn't following basic protocols, I'd be all for, shutting that place down or violating them. But they have no evidence to support so much of this. And yet the knee-jerk reaction is only and always to lock things down. It's not the right move. It's not what the health departments of a lot of other states are doing. It's not what the health departments of a lot of countries are doing. I mean, we saw kind of a disparate approaches in France and Spain recently with their second wave and their largest wave. And both countries have receded about 50 or 60% off their height of new cases. And yet France went down into a very hard lockdown. Spain went into a very soft lockdown. So there isn't consensus and clear evidence of what we should be doing. So the knee-jerk reaction shouldn't be to bankrupt mom and pop businesses, especially from, and I'm sorry to rant, but this guy just ramps me up. This is a guy who never missed a paycheck. He never had to max out his own credit cards. He never had to dip into his kid's college fund. He sits in a mansion that we pay for with servants and cooks and cleaners and security and barks orders of which counties and towns and neighborhoods have to shut down. It's not fair to those people, and people are getting sick of it.
Joe Borelli, everybody, New York City Councilman. Joe, always keeping it real, dropping truth bombs. Appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what we expect, unfortunately, as we go for the next couple of weeks into December, that we might see a surge superimposed upon that surge that we're already in. And, and when I give that message, I don't want to frighten people, except to say it is not too late at all for us to do something about this, because as we travel back, to be careful when we go back to where we are, to just continue to do the things that we've been talking about. An important issue, Chuck, is that we know when you mitigate with masks, with distance, with not having crowds or congregate settings, that those states that have done that, you can actually see that the inflection of their curve starts to do this. Right. So we know we can do something about it, particularly now as we get into the colder season and as we approach the Christmas holidays.
We know we can do something about this? He's still clinging to this, huh? Mask up. Wear your mask. It'll all be better if you wear your mask. We're all wearing masks all the time. We're doing all these things. And yet the numbers keep going up and up and up. And what do they say to us? Don't worry. Keep doing what we tell you. It'll all get better. It'll all get better. They haven't come up with these as policies they've implemented before during influenza outbreaks in this country. I'm talking about recently, not including the Spanish flu of 1918. If it was so easy and so straightforward, if it was just wear a mask, wash your hands, why haven't we been able to crush the flu in any given year? Why don't we see any provable, any demonstrable correlation between obeying the dictates of Fauci and all of a sudden a major drop in cases when there was an uptrend? Right? Making us do something and then eventually the case level goes down and saying, see, we brought the curve down. That's what they've been saying. That's different than cases are going up and, whoa, hold on a second. It changed direction. They never are able to prove this. There's a reason for that. There's a reason. There's a reason that you have public health authorities. And look, public health experts are increasingly, I think, a group that their reputation will never recover from this. They have been catastrophically wrong numerous times, and you know what some of those examples are. They've been wrong about this. They have been making errors of judgment, errors in terms of the policy mandates. And there's really no humility that comes from it, too. It's do these things we say because. And anyone who questions it or presents contrary evidence is shouted down. And they keep doing it, right? They keep believing. They want to believe that they have the answer, even when we've all seen their answers don't work. Remember when Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci were having a bit of a throwdown back in the day on seeing schools close? Rand Paul's like, why are we closing any schools? This is crazy. And Fauci's like, well, the school, the children, not as bad, but, maybe. He never says, even what Redfield, the head of the CDC, will say, which is, this is the deal, guys. We got to open schools. This is crazy. Fauci never says anything that upsets the lockdowner mentality. Have you noticed that? It's even when it couldn't be any more obvious that something should be more open, that schools, for example, should have always been opened and stayed open. Fauci is, well, the data, and we got to look at this, then the mitigation. And now finally he's saying schools should be open. Oh, I guess we're supposed to be thankful about this. Play 9.
The best way to ensure the safety of the children in school is to get the community level of spread low. So if you mitigate the things that you know are causing spread in a very, very profound way, in a robust way, if you bring that down, you will then indirectly and ultimately protect the children in the school, because the community level is determined how things go across the board. So my feeling would be the same thing. If you look at the data, the spread among children and from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected. So let's try to get the kids back, but let's try to mitigate the things that maintain and just push the kind of community spread that we're trying to avoid. And those are the things that you know well. The bars, the restaurants where you have capacity seating indoors without masks. Those are the things that drive the community spread, not the schools.
Notice he said what one would have thought would be the case in schools. That was a sly way of inserting in there what Fauci thought, which he was wrong about. He was somebody who was saying, well, schools, I think we got to look at it, the data and everything else. It was obvious. It was obvious that it was safe for children, that children were at basically no risk. And there was plenty of data, including from European countries that had already looked at this, that kept their schools open all along, to show that children weren't even a big risk of spreading it to adults. So children are basically safe from the virus. And even if a kid gets it, it's unlikely the kid will pass it to the adult. And let me also note, they don't really understand why that's the case. They have theories. They don't really know. But that's how this virus operates. Notice how he also says, Fauci also says here, that if we mitigate where we know the spread is happening, okay, where is the spread happening? He says it's restaurants and bars in these places. Those places have been under strict orders, lockdowns, shutdowns for months and months and months. So that's what we're supposed to believe? I was chased. I mean, it's crazy what you see going on. I was chased out of a restaurant at 10 o'clock over the weekend for no good reason.